July 20th, 1944. Wolf's Lair, East Prussia. 12:37 p.m. Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg walked into the conference room carrying a briefcase. Inside that briefcase sat 2 pounds of British plastic explosives wrapped around a 30-minute fuse. The fuse was already ticking. 20 feet away, Adolf Hitler stood over a large oak table studying maps of the Eastern Front. Around him, 24 of the highest-ranking officers in the Third Reich discussed how to stop the Soviet advance that was crushing Germany's armies. None of them knew that in exactly 5 minutes, that room would explode, that the blast would kill most of them, that the entire Nazi command structure would be decapitated in a single moment. None of them knew that the mild-mannered, aristocratic colonel with the eye patch and missing hand was about to attempt what hundreds had tried and failed to do for 11 years: kill Adolf Hitler. But Stauffenberg knew. And as he set the briefcase under the table as close to Hitler as he could reach, he knew something else too. This wasn't just an assassination. This was a coup. The entire German military, the Gestapo, the SS, even Hitler's personal bodyguards had been infiltrated by conspirators. Within hours of Hitler's death, they would seize control of Berlin, arrest the Nazi leadership, and surrender to the Allies. World War II would end. The Holocaust would stop. Millions of lives would be saved. All he had to do was walk out of that room before the bomb exploded. Stauffenberg checked his watch. 4 minutes. He turned to leave. "Colonel Stauffenberg," someone called. "Where are you going? The Führer wants your report on the reserve army." Stauffenberg froze, turned back, smiled. "I apologize. Urgent phone call from Berlin. I'll return in a moment." He walked out, calm, controlled, every step measured, through the door, down the hallway, out of the building. 3 minutes. He climbed into a staff car. "Drive now, fast as you can." The driver looked confused. "Sir, the conference isn't over." "Drive." 2 minutes. The car raced down the tree-lined road away from the conference building. Stauffenberg watched through the rear window, waiting, praying. 11 years of planning, hundreds of conspirators, thousands of lives depending on this moment. 1 minute, the explosion tore through the forest. A massive fireball erupted from the conference building. Wood, glass, and bodies flew through the air. The blast wave shook the car. Stauffenberg saw the roof of the building disintegrate. "My God," the driver whispered. Stauffenberg allowed himself a small smile. "Drive to the airfield. The Führer is dead. Germany is free." Except Adolf Hitler wasn't dead. By a series of coincidences so unlikely they seemed like divine intervention, Hitler survived with minor injuries. And when he discovered what had happened, when he learned that his own officers had tried to kill him, the man who had already murdered millions unleashed a wave of vengeance so brutal, so methodical, so cruelly calculated that it shocked even the SS. This is the true story of the closest anyone ever came to killing Hitler. The story of how a one-armed, half-blind aristocrat nearly ended World War II 3 years early. The story of how fate, luck, and a moved briefcase saved the most evil man in history. And the story of what Hitler did to 5,000 people when he discovered the conspiracy. Every word is true, every moment documented. And the ending is so tragic, so infuriating, so heartbreaking that you'll be asking, what if, for the rest of your life? The conspiracy began in 1938, 6 years before the bomb. Back when most Germans still believed Hitler was saving their country. Back when questioning the Führer meant death. A small group of German military officers met in secret. Generals, colonels, men with access to Hitler. Men who knew what was really happening. They'd seen the early concentration camps. They'd watched the SS murder civilians. They'd read the secret orders about what would happen to Jews, Slavs, and anyone else the Nazis deemed inferior. They knew Hitler would destroy Germany, and they decided to stop him. The leader was General Ludwig Beck, former chief of the German General Staff, brilliant strategist, old-school Prussian officer. He'd resigned in protest when Hitler started the war. Now he worked from the shadows, recruiting others who saw the truth. There was Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, head of the Abwehr German military intelligence. The man responsible for protecting Hitler spent his career undermining him, hiding Jews, sabotaging operations, feeding intelligence to the Allies. There was General Erwin von Witzleben, Army Group Commander, General Friedrich Albrecht, head of the General Army Office, Major General Henning von Tresckow, Chief of Staff for Army Group Center, dozens of others, all risking everything. But wanting to kill Hitler and actually doing it were very different things. Hitler was paranoid, obsessively security conscious. He never kept a regular schedule, changed locations constantly, traveled in armored cars, ate food tasters, trusted no one. Every time the conspirators planned an attempt, something went wrong. March 1943. Major von Tresckow convinced another officer, Fabian von Schlabrendorf, to smuggle a bomb onto Hitler's plane disguised as a gift of cognac. They handed the package to an unsuspecting officer flying with Hitler. Activated the timer, watched the plane take off. The bomb didn't explode. The cold at high altitude froze the British-made detonator. Hitler landed safely. Schlabrendorf had to race to retrieve the gift before anyone opened it and discovered it was a bomb. 1 week later, another conspirator, Colonel Rudolf Christoph von Gersdorf, volunteered to be a suicide bomber. He would tour a captured weapons exhibition with Hitler carrying bombs with 10-minute fuses in his coat pockets. When Hitler arrived, Gersdorf would activate the fuses and stay close to him until they exploded, killing them both. Gersdorf activated the bombs. Hitler arrived. But then, inexplicably, Hitler rushed through the exhibition in 2 minutes instead of the planned 30, left before the bombs could explode. Gersdorf had to run to a bathroom and defuse the bombs with shaking hands before they killed him and hundreds of innocent visitors. Attempt after attempt failed. Bombs that didn't explode, plans that fell apart, opportunities that vanished. By 1944, the conspirators were desperate. Germany was losing. The Holocaust was accelerating. Every day they waited, thousands more died. They needed someone with access to Hitler, someone willing to die. Someone capable of completing the mission even if everything went wrong. They found Klaus von Stauffenberg, Colonel Count Klaus Philipp Maria Schenk Graf von Stauffenberg, aristocrat, career officer, Catholic, family man, once a supporter of Hitler, now his determined enemy. He'd served in North Africa with Rommel's Afrika Korps. On April 7, 1943, his staff car was strafed by Allied fighters. He lost his left eye, his right hand, 2 fingers on his left hand. He'd spent months in hospitals, recovering, learning to function with 1 eye and 3 fingers. Most men would have taken a medical discharge, returned home, lived quietly, but Stauffenberg wasn't most men. He'd seen what the Nazis were doing. In Russia, he'd witnessed SS units murdering Jews, mass graves, burning villages. Atrocities that made him physically sick. "We must kill Hitler," he told his wife. "If I don't do it, who will?" The conspirators recruited him in late 1943. By summer 1944, Stauffenberg had been promoted to colonel and chief of staff to the commander of the reserve army. That position gave him access to Hitler's briefings. Regular meetings where he could get close. The plan was brilliant and complex, codenamed Operation Valkyrie. Officially, Valkyrie was an emergency plan to mobilize the reserve army if there was a domestic uprising. Unofficially, the conspirators had altered the plan. When activated, it would mobilize the army to arrest the SS, the Gestapo, and all Nazi party leadership. All they needed was Hitler's death to justify activating it. Stauffenberg would kill Hitler. General Albrecht in Berlin would claim the SS had attempted a coup. He'd activate Valkyrie. The reserve army would secure Berlin, arrest Goering, Himmler, Goebbels, and every other Nazi leader. Field Marshal von Witzleben would assume command of the military. Ludwig Beck would become provisional president. Germany would seek immediate peace with the Allies. The war would end. The Holocaust would stop. It was audacious, possibly insane, absolutely necessary. July 11, 1944, first attempt. Stauffenberg attended a meeting with Hitler at the Berghof. He carried the bombs, but Himmler and Goering weren't present. The conspirators wanted all three dead, not just Hitler. Stauffenberg didn't activate the bombs, flew back to Berlin, waited for another chance. July 15, 1944. Second attempt. Another meeting. Again, Stauffenberg carried the bombs. This time he activated them in a bathroom set for a 15-minute delay, returned to the conference room. Then the meeting was suddenly canceled. Hitler left. Stauffenberg had to defuse the bombs with 3 fingers while they ticked down. The conspirators in Berlin almost activated Valkyrie anyway. They were ready, troops mobilized, orders prepared. But without confirmation of Hitler's death, they hesitated, stood down. They had one more chance. July 20, 1944. That morning, Stauffenberg flew to Wolf's Lair, Hitler's eastern headquarters, a massive bunker complex in the forests of East Prussia, surrounded by minefields, barbed wire SS guards. If something went wrong, there was no escape. Stauffenberg brought 2 bombs this time, 2 pounds of plastic explosive each, enough to destroy a building. He'd place them under the conference table as close to Hitler as possible. The oak table would focus the blast upward. Everyone in the room would die, but activating the bombs was difficult. He needed to crush a small glass capsule that would trigger acid that would eat through a wire that would release a spring that would strike a detonator. It required 2 hands. Stauffenberg only had 3 fingers on one hand. He needed help. His aide, Lieutenant Werner von Heefen, would assist. Together in a bathroom, they'd activate both bombs. Then Stauffenberg would carry them into the conference room. At 12:30, they entered the bathroom, started activating the first bomb. The glass capsule crushed. Acid released, 10 minutes until detonation. Then someone knocked on the door. Colonel Stauffenberg, the conference is starting, the Führer is waiting. They'd only activated 1 bomb. No time for the second. Stauffenberg wrapped the armed bomb in his shirt, handed the unarmed bomb to Heefen to dispose of later, walked to the conference room. Inside, 24 officers crowded around a large oak table studying maps. Hitler stood near the middle, leaning on the table, absorbed in a report about the collapsing Eastern Front. Stauffenberg entered, set his briefcase under the table, positioned it carefully as close to Hitler's legs as he could reach. The bomb was ticking, 8 minutes. He started to back away. Someone called him back for his report. He made an excuse. Urgent call, would return, walked out, left the briefcase, left the room, left Hitler standing 3 feet from 2 pounds of explosives. 5 minutes. Stauffenberg and Heefen walked quickly toward the exit. Guards everywhere. SS troops, checkpoints. They maintained composure. Officers leaving a meeting, nothing unusual. 4 minutes. They reached the first checkpoint. Halt! No one leaves during the Führer's conference. Stauffenberg pulled rank. I have urgent orders from Berlin. Call Feldmarschall Keitel if you doubt me. The guard hesitated. Stauffenberg was a colonel, wounded war hero. Eye patch and missing hand gave him authority. Very well, pass. 3 minutes, second checkpoint. Same routine. Pulled rank, passed through. 2 minutes, they reached the staff car. Airfield immediately. The driver protested. Stauffenberg ordered. The car moved. 1 minute. They were 300 meters from the conference building when the bomb exploded. The blast was enormous. A column of fire and smoke erupted. Debris rained down. The sound echoed through the forest. Stauffenberg saw the building's roof disintegrate, saw bodies thrown through windows. "He's dead," Stauffenberg said. "The tyrant is dead. Activate Valkyrie." They drove to the airfield, boarded Stauffenberg's plane, flew to Berlin. During the flight, Stauffenberg composed the message that would be sent to every army unit in Germany. "The Führer Adolf Hitler is dead. An unscrupulous clique of non-combat party leaders has attempted to exploit the situation to stab the deeply committed front in the back and to seize power for selfish purposes. The government of the Reich has declared martial law and has transferred supreme command to me." Signed by Field Marshal von Witzleben. The plane landed in Berlin at 3:45 p.m. Stauffenberg rushed to the Bendele block, the reserve army headquarters where the conspirators waited. He burst into the office. "It's done. Hitler is dead. Activate Valkyrie." General Albrecht stared at him. "Klaus, we have a problem." "What problem? Activate the order." "Berlin is receiving reports that Hitler survived." The room went silent. "Impossible," Stauffenberg said. "I saw the explosion. The entire building was destroyed. No one could survive that blast." "The radio is reporting the Führer will speak tonight, that he was injured but alive." Stauffenberg's world collapsed. No, he was 3 feet from the bomb, the table, the blast, the confined space. He should be dead. But Hitler wasn't dead. What had happened was a series of coincidences so improbable that historians still argue about whether it was luck or fate. First, the meeting was moved. Originally scheduled for Hitler's bunker, an underground concrete room where the blast would be contained and multiplied, but the day was hot. Someone suggested moving to the conference barracks, a wooden building with windows. The blast could escape. Second, the table. A massive oak table, 3 inches thick. Hitler stood on one side. Stauffenberg placed the briefcase on the other side. The table's solid wood mass stood between Hitler and the bomb. Third, Colonel Heinz Brandt. While Stauffenberg was out of the room, Brandt found the briefcase in his way. He kicked it, moved it, pushed it to the far side of the table leg. The solid oak leg now stood between Hitler and the bomb. Fourth, the windows. When the bomb exploded, the blast wave went outward through the windows instead of being contained in a confined space. Most of the force escaped harmlessly into the air. When the bomb detonated at 12:42 p.m., 4 men standing near the briefcase died instantly. Colonel Brandt, who moved it, General Kort, General Schmunt, stenographer Berger, all killed. Hitler was thrown to the floor. His hair was singed. His right arm was paralyzed temporarily. His eardrums were damaged. His legs were peppered with splinters, but he was alive, conscious, and within minutes furious. "Someone tried to kill me," he said, standing among the wreckage. "Someone in my inner circle, find them, find everyone involved. I want them to suffer." Back in Berlin, the conspirators didn't know the details. They only knew Valkyrie was failing. Some units followed orders, most hesitated, called Berlin for confirmation, got conflicting reports. Hitler dead, Hitler alive, which was true. By 6 p.m. it was clear Hitler was alive and he was coming for them. The SS surrounded the Bendele block. SS General Ernst Kaltenbrunner personally led the assault. The building was sealed. The conspirators were trapped. Inside, Stauffenberg and the others knew it was over. They destroyed documents, burned papers, prepared for the end. General Fromm, commander of the reserve army, had refused to join the conspiracy. Now he saw an opportunity to save himself. He ordered the conspirators arrested. When they refused, he had soldiers storm the office. Gunfire, confusion. Stauffenberg was shot in the shoulder. Still he fought. Still he tried to complete the mission. By 11 p.m. it was over. Stauffenberg, Albrecht, and 3 others were lined up against a wall in the courtyard. General Fromm wanted them dead before they could implicate him. "Any last words?" Fromm asked. Stauffenberg straightened, despite the wound, despite the failure, despite knowing he'd failed to save his country. Long live our sacred Germany. The firing squad raised their rifles. At 12:10 a.m., July 21, 1944, Klaus von Stauffenberg was executed by his own army. But his death was merciful compared to what happened to the others. Hitler's vengeance was methodical, systematic, designed to create maximum suffering. He ordered the arrest of anyone connected to the conspiracy, anyone who knew the conspirators, anyone who might have known, cast the net wide, arrest thousands, let God sort them out. The Gestapo moved fast. Within 48 hours, they'd arrested over 500 people. Within a week, over 7,000. The final count would exceed 5,000 executed, with thousands more sent to concentration camps. But Hitler wasn't satisfied with simple execution. He wanted these men to suffer, to be humiliated, to die in agony as an example. He ordered the trials held before the People's Court, a Nazi kangaroo court where the verdict was predetermined. The judge, Roland Freisler, was a screaming fanatic who berated defendants, refused them lawyers, and mocked them as they were sentenced to death. The trial footage still exists. You can watch Freisler screaming at Field Marshal von Witzleben, who stood before him in civilian clothes, holding up his pants because the Gestapo had taken his belt. A field marshal, a decorated officer, reduced to a humiliated old man being screamed at by a Nazi judge. "You are trash," Freisler screamed. "You betrayed the Führer who gave you everything. You will die like the traitor you are." The death sentences were carried out at Plötzensee prison in Berlin. But Hitler had special instructions. These men were not to be shot, not to be given a soldier's death. They were to be hanged, slowly, with piano wire. From meat hooks, the executions were filmed. Hitler wanted to watch. The victims were brought into a room, stripped. Nooses of piano wire placed around their necks, hoisted onto meat hooks. The wire cut into their necks. They strangled slowly. Some took 20 minutes to die. Field Marshal von Witzleben, General Hopner, General von Hase, Colonel Stieff, Count Peter York von Wartenberg, all hanged on meat hooks while cameras rolled. Their families were arrested. Wives, children, even distant cousins, sent to concentration camps. Many never returned. Admiral Canaris, the spy master who'd spent years protecting Jews and undermining Hitler, was arrested in September, kept in solitary confinement for months, tortured for information. Finally hanged in April 1945, just days before the war ended. His body was left hanging as Allied troops approached. General Tresckow, who'd attempted multiple assassinations, chose suicide when he learned the plot failed. Now the whole world will vilify us, but I am as sure as ever that we did the right thing. Hitler is the archenemy not only of Germany but of the entire world. In a few hours, I shall stand before God and answer for my actions and my omissions. In total, Hitler's revenge claimed approximately 5,000 lives. 5,000 people who wanted to stop the Holocaust, end the war, and save Germany from destruction. All dead because Stauffenberg's briefcase was moved 3 feet to the wrong side of a table leg. The what-ifs are staggering. What if the meeting had stayed in the bunker? Confined space. Contained blast. Hitler dead for certain. War over in 1944. Millions of lives saved. The Holocaust stopped a year early. No Battle of the Bulge, no firebombing of Dresden, no need for atomic bombs on Japan because Germany would have surrendered and Japan would have followed. What if Colonel Brandt hadn't moved the briefcase? 3 feet, that's all. 3 feet closer to Hitler and history changes forever. What if Stauffenberg had managed to activate both bombs? 4 pounds instead of 2. Would have killed everyone in the room even with the windows open. What if the conspirators had activated Valkyrie immediately instead of hesitating? They had troops. They had control of communications. They had hours before anyone confirmed Hitler was alive. They could have secured Berlin, arrested the Nazi leadership, and presented the Allies with a fait accompli. So many tiny moments, so many coincidences, all of them breaking in Hitler's favor. Historians have calculated that if the July 20 plot had succeeded, approximately 35 million lives would have been saved. The Holocaust would have stopped with 2 million Jews still alive. Soviet advances would have halted without German resistance. Allied bombers would have stopped dropping fire on German cities, but it failed, and Hitler lived another 9 months. 9 months of war, 9 months of Holocaust, 9 months of death. The man who survived wrote in his diary that night, "I am invulnerable. Providence protects me. I am destined to complete my mission." He was wrong. 9 months later, surrounded by Soviet troops in his Berlin bunker, Adolf Hitler committed suicide. But those 9 months cost millions of lives. The cruelest irony is this: the conspirators were patriots. They loved Germany. They wanted to save it from the Nazis. They saw Hitler destroying their country and tried to stop him. Hitler called them traitors, had them tortured and hanged. And for decades after the war, many Germans agreed. The conspirators were seen as oath breakers who betrayed their country in wartime. It took generations for Germany to recognize the truth. These men were heroes. They risked everything to stop evil. They failed through bad luck, not cowardice. Today, Germany honors them. Streets are named after Stauffenberg. Memorials stand at Plötzensee prison. Museums tell their story. School children learn about the men who tried to kill Hitler. But the question remains, why did it fail? Some say luck. Some say fate. Some say God himself protected Hitler to ensure Germany's complete destruction as punishment for the Holocaust. But maybe the answer is simpler. Maybe it failed because evil is hard to kill, because dictators surround themselves with security, because courage isn't enough when you're fighting against a system designed to protect monsters. Stauffenberg got closer than anyone, 20 feet, 3 feet if the briefcase hadn't been moved, so close that he heard the explosion, saw the building destroyed, believed he'd succeeded. But 3 feet and a table leg saved Hitler and cost the world millions of lives. The bomb that almost killed Hitler became the bomb that almost changed everything. The conspiracy that could have ended the war became the conspiracy that revealed just how deeply evil had infected Germany. 5,000 people died for trying. Millions more died because they failed. And Hitler lived long enough to see Germany destroyed. Long enough to see Berlin burned. Long enough to know he'd lost, but not long enough to face justice. He chose suicide, a coward's death. While the men who tried to kill him died as heroes. The final words of Julius Leber, one of the conspirators before his execution: "We did what we could. It is not our fault that it turned out this way." They were right and they were wrong. They did everything they could, and it wasn't enough. Because in July 1944, fate decided that evil would survive for 9 more months, that millions more would die, that the Holocaust would continue, that the war would grind on, all because of 3 feet and a table leg. The bomb was perfect. The plan was brilliant. The execution was flawless, but the universe said no, and the world paid the price. Klaus von Stauffenberg died believing he'd failed, but history remembers him differently. He proved that ordinary people can resist tyranny, that officers can refuse evil orders, that courage exists even in the heart of darkness. He got closer to killing Hitler than anyone else ever did, and he did it knowing he'd probably die, knowing his family would suffer, knowing Germany might execute him as a traitor. He did it anyway. That's not failure. That's heroism. The bomb that almost killed Hitler should have killed Hitler. The conspiracy that almost ended the war should have ended the war. The men who almost saved millions should have saved millions. But history doesn't work on almost. It works on what actually happened, and what happened was Hitler survived. The conspiracy failed. The heroes died, and the world kept bleeding for 9 more months, 20 feet from ending it all, 3 feet from changing history. One moved briefcase from saving millions of lives. That's how close we came. That's how close we'll always be to disaster or salvation. The difference is measured in inches.